you know.
Yeah. Hey, that's if that's the worst thing that happens in your life, you're doing pretty well.
I don't know. It's getting burglarized and having.
Were you burglarized?
Yeah, once I was gone on a weekend trip.
Did they steal anything?
Yeah.
I mean, guitars.
No. Luckily, I had my guitars in the car, which is not even. It's not advisable. You know what I mean?
I have a friend of mine who he's kind of got me back into guitars a few years ago, and he was telling me he was burglarized. He was in South Carolina, and they came into his house, and he has these C.P. Thorntons. Are you familiar with those? It's a handmade electric guitars. I don't think he makes any acoustic. The guy's out of Maine, and he had a collection of 10 guitars, and the Thornton guitars will range from, let's say, $3,000 to $6,000. He had 10 of them. They didn't take one guitar.
Wow.
They took a TV.
Huh.
Yeah, they took very odd things.
Maybe they didn't know enough about them to flip it. You know?
That's what he said. He said they just didn't know what they had before them. So how long are you in town for?
I'm in town until the 9th, actually. So quite a lengthy trip.
Yeah. So next Monday, I guess, right? Next
Sunday. So I'm expecting one other for sure, but it could be up to 8 or 9, depending on the maybes.
On the maybes, yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
you
always
know
the
those
challenge.
Facebook maybes, yeah.
Gotta love those maybes.
Yeah, I was a maybe, and I'm like, I had to remain a maybe
And
until
maybe that became a yes is great. I will take that. Let's see.
How many years have you been playing, Tim?
6,
6, yeah.
maybe 7, yeah. More serious sometimes than other years, you know.
Unfortunately, I don't think they can see the TV from here. That's quite alright, I guess. John's very familiar with this.
Yes, that is I recognize that right away. Then mine has a few more tabs at the bottom.
Yeah, I think it does. Right, because we've worked on specific songs.
And a few different directions that have gone in.
Right now there are 3 viewers. Hey! I wonder how I can chat with them. Should be able to. I've done this before. I'm a professional.
Yeah, this is old hat for you now.
Where is the
European
chat?
tour?
Where is the chat? Seriously, I don't know where the chat is. You guys ever use Ustream?
The only time I ever used
Getting
it was
desperate.
watching. The only time
Asking you guys.
was watching you.
No. Chat. Oh, there we go. There it is. Hello. Can anyone see what I'm typing right now?
And are you originally from New York?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts? How did you guys meet?
I first found his YouTube channel looking for a paranoid android tutorial.
Okay.
Followed him a little bit, we were in touch when he visited 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually met up when you were in the city.
It didn't work
One
out.
of those open
right?
mic games. Yeah, it was the night there was like a hurricane in New York.
Oh, that's
Oh
you.
yeah, I walked
It was,
straight
like,
through
ridiculous.
that stuff.
Yeah, I went out with my guitar and came right back.
That
in 'cause
case kept my guitar dry.
That's
Was it that Pete's Candy Store?
No, that was last year.
Because that was a torrential rain. I mean, I was on
Every
Long
time I
Island.
come, there's torrential rain, so watch out sometime this week. You know, it'll
It's
happen
coming.
again. Did someone knock?
I thought I did hear something.
maybe.
So did you take any lessons with him or?
Nope,
No?
nothing formal.
Okay.
Just what's on his YouTube.
Okay, so the real reason why we're here is to just watch you guys play. And,
Uh-oh.
you know, and you can kind of serenade me, you know? Need some relaxing tunes. I don't think anybody can see my chat. Because
How long have you been in New York?
It's about 2007. I came here for school and graduated a couple of years ago.
Where'd you go?
So about 6 years ago. Pace.
Pace?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess you love it here, so.
Yep. Stuck around. Well,
Yeah.
I studied finance, so I came to New York for that reason.
And
too.
you work in
So
finance?
It makes
or-
sense. I work in finance and IT,
Okay.
a combination of the two. The software consulting group that like builds accounting systems and stuff for hedge funds, whatever they need, sort of stuff. So I don't do the development work, but I like manage the projects and deal with the data and the clients and
Okay.
all that annoying stuff. So
It's your company or?
No.
No, you work.
it's called Gravitas, the
Okay.
company I work for.
Okay.
Just a much bigger technology company.
my cousin works for Deloitte.
Oh yeah.
So I imagine
Oh, yeah,
it
so-
sounds similar, like where I don't understand anything they're talking about, but they solve problems. You know?
It's kind of like when you're talking to me. I don't have anything. I don't have any understanding
go.
of what he's talking
There you
about.
go.
Actually, I have come to understand some of that, but
Working.
a lot more than I thought I would.
For some reason, somebody says it's not working. No, let's see. It's always tricky with this.
Yeah, no, I'm at my computer right now, just bringing it up. But I'd just like to
30-second
say
ad.
that, look, I'd just like to say that I 100%
It's working!
agree with Delaware. I think
Yeah!
they got the right idea. And look,
WARRENMUSIC.
I didn't hear you. In that case, I do not agree with them. I think that's a bad idea.
This is unreal.
Hello? Hello?
Nice to meet you.
2 years is too long to wait. Introducing Joe.
I'm a little sweaty.
Whatever you want, not when you're
I'm
told.
not used to the humidity.
It is very hot today, yeah.
Thank you for that list of like
sure,
co-working spaces.
Come in handy.
I called like all of them, but I only got a couple responses. But some of them are actually not around anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm at my computer right now, just bringing it up. But I'd just like to say that, look,
We're just gonna see if this
I'd just like to say that I
Yeah, it's
100%
working.
agree with Delaware. I
Our
think
host has
they got the right
graciously
idea.
offered his place,
Look,
and I'm feeling
I didn't hear you. In that case, I do not.
I want to have this thing ambitious, unreal, and kind of like an artist.
Hello? 2 years is too long to wait. Introducing Joe.
I'm a little sweaty.
Whatever you want, not when you're told.
I'm not used to the humidity in the bedroom.
It is very hot.
You have to stick with the fan. Thank you for that list of so I'm enjoying this.
Hi, I'm John. Nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, just enough room to sleep.
So,
Yeah, no, I'm at my computer right now, just bringing it up. But I'd just like to say that,
No,
it almost happened last year. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you know?
Working now.
YouTube.
This is pretty unreal, huh?
So you've been here for 6 years?
Oh, well, yeah, in the city
Okay.
for 6 years. Like a bunch of different apartments and stuff. Just moved here a few months ago, though.
Oh, so it's still feeling new?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We can call this my homecoming. How's that? Or my housewarming.
Housewarming.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, it's
Home
it's,
isn't the word, but
Long H word, yeah.
it's nice and, you know, raucous and joyous. Yeah, so I guess we're might as well start. You know, if people trickle in, they'll trickle in. So we're kind of like streaming this deal over here, which is kind of funny because like they can't see anything that's going on. I didn't, you know, you can tell I'm a professional.
oh, you need that for your lesson.
You know, I'm just gonna put this here. I feel more secure with it.
Guitar, huh?
Yeah.
You know.
I won't set up.
That's the guitar we see by the side.
Guitar.
There it is.
So, just kidding, you know, like, without her I feel naked. No, not the case. So, well, thank you guys for coming. This is like, I don't know, like, if it's cooler for you or for me, I think this is pretty unreal. So, I'll start off with like a little story, a little background. For those of you, especially Kevin, who don't know exactly what I'm doing and like who I am, why I'm here.
I know, believe me.
Okay.
You heard?
Okay, so someone's got an earful. Well, you know, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Okay, so I grew up in a Chinese American home, and if you guys know Chinese Americans, typically they're not all that into like the idea of their kids becoming like musicians or anything like that. They have the tiger mom type of stereotype, but my parents were not like that. And although like a lot of my friends actually they were, so like I feel like I kind of got fortunate. I had this kind of like an outlier of an experience growing up, and my parents were always super supportive of like my whatever pursuits. And I said, Mom, Dad, you know, I wanna get into music in college, and they're like, okay, all right. I don't know what I'm gonna do afterwards, but you know, I really like it. And they said, support that. And so I was fortunate enough to study ethnomusicology. Does anybody have any clue what that is? So ethnomusicology, I studied at UCLA. There's a bunch of professors there that kind of either have something to do with the founding of that field, or like their dad or whatever was a professor. Essentially, it's anthropology and music. And I only chose ethnomusicology because I didn't want to spend hours and hours in a practice room trying to learn how to play like piano to like a concert level, or guitar to a concert level. I also messed around with jazz drums, and I thought, you know, I'm not really a technician, but I love thinking about music. I love understanding music and what it does to my ears and to my emotion, you know, and it would be kind of cool to get exposed to lots of different styles of music. So through ethnomusicology, I was exposed to like North Indian music, classical music, Hindustani music. I was exposed to some Arabic classical music, Javanese, gamelan. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this stuff, you know. And it's funny, like when I meet people, I say, hey, you know, what kind of music are you into? And they're like, oh, I listen to everything. I'm like, oh, is that so? You do? Okay. Yeah,
I bet you don't.
Yeah, I haven't even scratched the surface, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, there's so many different types of music out there, so that eventually, like after my brain got rearranged and just kind of like disoriented, I came back to the music that I grew up loving, which is some kind of variant or, you know, offspring of Western music. Okay, it's a very general term, but I realized there were some issues with the way that Western music was taught. Now, it goes all the way back to when I was like 6 years old, and I could flash back and see myself at the piano with my piano teacher telling me, okay, well, play it again because you missed this note. And I'm like, which note? And she would point, and I'd be like, oh, well, it's hard to read. It's very like, I'm very slow at reading, and this is all in my head, but you know, I would just get flustered and just I have a tough time like reading, and like eventually I got kind of into reading music, but it has never been my strong suit. And so after college, I figured I don't read music. I play more by ear. I feel like music is something that, well, it's not that I feel it, but music is something you hear. So like, why do we spend all this time like using all these symbols that, you know, are kind of hard to understand? They're written by some Italians back in, you know, a few hundred years ago. I'm gonna try to reimagine the way that I would kind of describe the music that I listen to. And so I started thinking about my different pieces of music theory that I picked up over the years. I studied in this thing called the Kodai method, where they teach you that whatever your pitch, you can kind of treat any pitch you want as like the home note, like the do, or it could be up here maybe do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and then that do is there, but this do is down here, and you can kind of see all these things in melody and harmony as having relationships to like this central note, and all of a sudden things started to like kind of come together, and it was really kind of starting to gel for me when I kind of picked apart different things that I kind of got from my from my musical background when I had to teach my first lesson. Now, this was not a planned thing that after college I would become a music teacher. I had no idea what I was going to do. I worked at the retail store, Guitar Center, selling strings and picks, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "You guys give guitar lessons?" And I'm like, you know what? I hadn't been thinking about it, but no, Guitar Center doesn't. I
do.
And she goes, like, you know, like how there's like back and forth in a conversation, she like jumps like 3 steps ahead and she says, "I'll give you X amount of money a month to come to my house to teach my son once a week, and we live 2 minutes away from here." I'm like, okay, we'll give that a shot then. You know, it was like this opportunity just kind of fell in my lap, and I was very fortunate to have been able to not have to quit my job to, you know, to try out a different job. And I taught this lesson, and all of these ideas were just percolating and bouncing around in my head, and you know, it's not the finished result, it's always a work in progress, but eventually it started to kind of come out with this first student of mine. And later on, this kid, he actually ended up playing in America's Got Talent for one of the preliminary rounds, and I saw him in LA play for what's his name? Howie, and at that time it was like Sharon Osbourne and Pierce Morgan, and it was this very surreal experience. Like, I could never have asked for, you know, a more kind of perfect first student to kind of encourage me to take that step into teaching. And it's like, you know, he's just eating it all up. He's very bright, he's 15 years old, and everything he had learned from his previous guitar teacher was wrong. You know, he just didn't know where to put his fingers, he didn't know how to kind of, he didn't know the names of the strings, and like, eventually it just kind of like snowballed, and I'm like, man, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy connecting with this young person, helping him see that he's like realizing his potential and helping him get more out of the music that he likes, and that's kind of what ended up snowballing even more into this YouTube thing. And it kind of crystallized one night when I heard Radiohead's album in 2007 called In Rainbows, and the whole world kind of was invited to download that album and pay whatever they wanted for it. And the day it came out, my housemate at the time, who knew that I played by ear, asked me if I could kind of learn any of these songs. Just kind of like a party trick, you know what I mean? Like, I go to a party, maybe, you know, like, I say, yeah, I'll play a song, whatever, you know, by ear, and, you know, make people kind of laugh or whatever. And so he had me do this one song from this album, and it had just come out, so everybody had just heard it for the first time that day. And he gave me a few minutes, and I came back with the song, and he was like, "That's awesome, we need to put this on YouTube." And I said, "I don't know about that, because everybody's going to be like judging me, and like, I'm not the best technician, you know, when it comes to like virtuosic stuff." And just feeling like, yeah, you know, when you put yourself out there, then it's just like this whole, you know, and I don't know. And he says, "But you would be the first, because Radiohead plays this song and nobody else knows how to play it. Everybody's been hearing it for like the first time, and I was just like, yes, okay, that sounds really exciting. And so we did it. I sent a little message on my Facebook wall saying, hey, friends and family, check out my YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube. And after a week, I think I got like 1,000 views on that video. And I'm like, I don't have 1,000 friends. It's not possible, you know? Like, who are these people? And I realized that, like, looking back, Radiohead's album was like the top Googled thing that day. And these people were just coming in, searching for these songs to listen to them online. Maybe they didn't download it, or maybe, I don't know why, but they all found my video somehow. And they were kind of flabbergasted because, you know, normally people have to wait for somebody to come up with a tab of varying accuracy, a tutorial DVD, which then you have to pay money for, and they aren't even written by the artist, or books, same kind of category there. And so here was this video of some guy, I imagine, teaching you the song note for note, and it just like kind of all came together at that point. And so I think this is kind of where I am now on this journey, and we're here in this living room. Thank you very much, Tim, for providing the space. And I just love talking about my passion for music, and I hope that tonight that somehow I can. That was a long intro, huh?
That was a good intro. I mean, I've known you for a year and change, and that gave me a greater detail.
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
Great.
Yeah, so I hope tonight somehow we can help you guys, get more out of the music that you like. Whether you're a music creator or just a listener, get a little bit more out of the songs that you're into. And so I don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of all based off of what you guys bring to the table tonight, and a little bit of some inspiration and some electricity in the air, and this wonderful thing that we have called Wi-Fi. And we'll see what happens. There are some basic ideas in a lot of the Western music that we are exposed to. I'm going to assume that you grew up in Turkey and only played Sufi music. Growing up, I'm going to assume that a lot of the music that we grew up in, it can essentially be distilled down into three basic core ideas, and these are melody, harmony, is that somebody? And rhythm, or is that the fridge?
That's my fridge kicking up.
That's the fridge. Okay, I got excited for a second.
The fridge is already listening. So.
All right, very good. And so melody, harmony, and rhythm, a lot of the ideas in music can be distilled down to these three basic things, meaning that if you got any more basic, you might start to lose some of the essence of the song. And if you got more complex, well, then you have stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be there for the essence of the song or the identity of the song to come through. And there are these just basic elements that if you have the tools with which to grasp what's going on rhythmically in a song, and describe what you're hearing harmonically in a song, and to plot out what you're hearing melodically in a song, then all those three things will inform what you can do with it as a listener. You can kind of pick those things out, and you start to, it's kind of like when someone tells you, hey, look at this piece of art, and how there's a lot of use of rigid, straight lines in Picasso's Cubism. And all of a sudden, like, you see this painting and you're like, whoa, I think a good museum tour guide or whatever can kind of point out a few details. And all of a sudden, those things jump out at you, and you're able to appreciate the work, not just on a passive kind of experiential level, but also like a more active and kind of engaged and like critical level. And that's what I hope to do with these things here up on the page. I'm going to kind of do one of these, or maybe a few of these, depending on what happens here tonight. So yeah, not sure if I explained everything I was hoping to explain. Okay, yes. So describing what it is that you're hearing in the song that you're into, the song that you like, the song that you just can't get out of your head, that allows you to pinpoint things that you hear in the song. in greater detail. It allows you to kind of, you know, really engage with the song on a deeper level. Not only that, it also, if you're a musician or if you have an instrument, allows you to do and manipulate sound on your instrument, whatever instrument that may be. This is not just limited to guitar. Whatever that may be, to reproduce that music in different forms and kind of do some different things. So just to kind of maybe kickstart some ideas in everybody's head, I'll show everybody kind of something that I mean by doing this process. So Radiohead's an easy choice because, you know, everybody knows that I do a lot of Radiohead videos. Tune. Okay, so there's this song, True Love Waits. Okay, we'll talk about True Love Waits for some, I don't know why. I'm in New York. I feel like
True Love Waits.
Relationships, you know, that people wait for a long time, but they decide to like, no, I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's true.
So this is the basic song. And it goes like this. I don't think I can remember all the words. Notice that when you hear that song, okay, if you like that song, I assume that it has something to do with the way all those sounds come together, and I think that's kind of where most people will leave it, okay, but me, I gotta get more out of it, and it has to do with partly my personality type. I love figuring out things, I love getting to the core of things, and people too, you know, and when I hear this song, what I hear is, number one, I hear the guitar strumming pattern. I hear the pattern, and it's kind of going like, it's kind of like this weird strumming pattern that I'm not used to. Kind of sticks out to me. I like that. There's this kind of, that texture of the strings just kind of going. And then there's the chord, which is kind of happy. And then it goes somewhere not so happy, maybe a little more complicated, you know? And then there's some melancholiness to it, and then kind of like an interesting choice there. And then the vocal melody kind of comes in and does some kind of some smoothing out of all of that, you know? And so with a song like that, just to get into the song more and to challenge myself as a musician and to just kind of immerse myself into the song in a different way, I'll try to process what I'm hearing and spit it back out differently than the way that I took it in. And that's how I know I really engaged with it. So what I mean by that is maybe I love finger picking. It's kind of my thing. So it'll go like this. So, first impressions right here. Like, what did I do to that song besides butcher it? No. What did I do to it? Anybody?
Well, to me, it's you personalized it, and what I'm thinking as you're playing it is how much are you thinking and how much are you just kind of feeling your way through that piece? Because even though you describe it as butchering, there's a lot of emotion in the song, but there's a lot of emotion in how you just play that.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's a good. I think it's a good compliment for any musician when someone says they feel something, right, when you play. So to answer your question, there's a fair amount of thinking, and I would say that I'm quite lucky if I'm able to put some feeling into something like that the first time. So,
Okay.
but I know the song. I've heard it a million times. I know a lot of the things that the song uses, like the key of C major and playing in 4, having a 4 count to the rhythm, and also where my strings are, because my fingers are kind of familiar with moving around and stuff like that. Okay, does it make sense? So like the song clearly utilizes elements that I'm already familiar with, right? It's like I've tasted a New York cheesecake, and I'm into it. I love it. There's a special thing about it, but of course the constituent parts are things I've had before. You know what I mean? Unless they put like some fancy thing for people who live in Manhattan that I've never had. I don't know.
That's not the purest.
It's not the purest. Okay. There's a really good place in San Francisco called Zanzi's that I think is actually better than anything I've had out here, but maybe like something offensive to locals for me to say that. But yeah, okay. Any other impressions about what I did to the song?
It sounded like you kept the rhythm the same, even though you were finger picking instead of strumming.
Okay.
Kind of like the rakes you were doing.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now I'll kind of show you what I was doing in slow-mo, right? I was going to... There's that kind of repeating da-da, 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 da-da. I don't remember ever being able to snap that loud until like I taught my first lesson, and all of a sudden it scared myself. Where did that come from? And it was like meant to be, like because I was teaching, it just like my fingers must have known that I needed this good teaching snap. So the rhythm originally was... So what I did was I did the same rhythm, but I was able to kind of distribute the rhythm of that strumming pattern across 2 different kind of groupings of my fingers. There's the thumb taking care of like the lower note in the chord that kind of anchors the chord, and then these 2 fingers were kind of filling in the rest of the chord. But by the fact that I was able to break up the chords, right, I could kind of use that effect, that kind of what do they call it? Staggered effect to take care of the different issues with the timing, right? Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Any other impressions? What did I do to that song? So just the rhythm that I kind of like kept. What else did I?
It sounded like softer and maybe a little more kind of folky a little bit.
Okay.
And instead of,
Yeah. Okay. So that might not be something in the original. Are you saying that?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I added a little bit of my own kind of stylistic interpretation of the musical content. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's an exciting thing, right? Because you can actually take something and then kind of transform it a little bit. You guys ever heard a really good cover song that sounds exactly the same as the original?
Vanilla Fudge.
Vanilla Fudge. I don't know what that is.
Oh, what's the song?
I know Vanilla Ice.
Oh it was like a cover they played in like the 60s of like some Motown singing group. They made it like an acid rock song. It was really insane.
Okay.
I'll show it to you later. It's awesome.
I'm sure there in the history of music there have been some covers that do the original better than the original did it, but I would say that's probably few and far between. Majority of interesting covers that are very compelling and even have maybe people arguing on YouTube comments, no, this is better, no, the other one was better, is the idea that like they kind of take it and then make it something else, make it their own, you know? I once heard a metal band play some theme music from Mario, and that was like very entertaining. I was like into it, wow. You know? So yeah, stylistically, you know, maybe there's some changes there from the original. So anything else from the original that actually did stay intact?
Kind of were you like highlighting the melody notes a little bit too?
Okay.
I don't know if that's just a thing with the finger picking.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Also like the end when you slide up. I don't know if it's like the 9 on that A major chord or whatever it is on the end.
Okay.
Sounded,
yeah. I was doing this chord. But yeah, you're right. I was trying, and I'm glad that came through. I was trying to emphasize what would have been sung in that song without having to sing it. I mean, normally, right, when you experience that song, it's strummed and then there's a singer and there's, you know, 2 instruments kind of giving off the impression of that song. But if I played that on some random, maybe subway station corner, okay, would a person who knew that song recognize it? I'm pretty sure they would, right? Because what I was able to do was, even though I only had this one instrument, I was able to translate all of that, or kind of almost reconcile those different parts with the limited number of strings that I have on the guitar. And part of the answer to how that happens is this chord has a bunch of notes in it, and some of the notes in the chords actually are the same notes that the singer will be singing, and some of them are, if they are not the same notes, they're not far from the singer's melody notes. And so what I'll do is I'll manipulate the chord until it kind of does what I need it to do, right? Okay, so for instance, Happy Birthday, I mean, I don't know how many people have played that song on a guitar in this room, but you know, one day I just felt like doing that to show a student kind of this idea, but it was like, okay, you guys actually, you know what, pick a key, C, G, D, A, E, what do you feel like? What key?
A.
A, okay, making it hard, okay. So, see that? There's that melody coursing, finding its way through the chords, right? Getting fancy with the inversion. And then I like that sound. And then maybe I'll get fancy with the minor chord. Okay, so that's another very familiar song, and we have some of that kind of rhythmic element of the dun, 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 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, and you know that snap, that really loud snap. And the chords kind of followed along and kind of gave some backup to the song, and the melody was there throughout the whole thing, right? And next time when you hear Happy Birthday, or you want to like celebrate your loved one's birthday or your friend's birthday, maybe you can pull out the guitar and look into like how does one harmonize a melody? How does one integrate melody and chords into the same thing? It could also be on piano, you know, if we had a stand-up piano, you know, we could also apply some similar ideas. Maybe it'd be even easier because on the guitar you have to wrangle with a limited number of strings. But How about right now, what do you guys say we open it up to just any song of your choice now? And if I've heard of it, great, that might be easier for me. But if I haven't, it has to be YouTubeable. I have to be able to find it on YouTube. Although it might not work out here.
To play now? Is it gonna play?
Mm-hmm. Or, well, not to play, but more to like break down
Okay.
into, yeah. Maybe some people on the Ustream will suggest something now too. But you guys get preference because you came out.
So the Ustreaming is
It's happening.
you're going out. The audio is obviously going out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So don't tell everybody your social security number, of course. You know.
Or yours.
So what have you been listening to? What did you hear in the car on the way over here, John? Or what have you heard on the radio? Or what have you?
Do you want to try that song I was playing earlier that you thought
Oh
you knew?
man.
You want to
Okay.
try? Because now we know that one you don't know. Right?
Okay.
But we would have to listen to it,
It's a
right?
tricky one. Yeah, but okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Thank you, our gracious host. So this was not arranged beforehand, so we'll see what kind of happens. And while he's getting that set up, everybody's following along. Any
Yeah.
questions so far?
Do you want to type to them what song we're doing in case they want to hear it?
Sure. I will definitely let them know what it is. What? Who
Alright.
is Deer and the Headlights?
The spelling is important.
DEAR, not
And
Deer,
the Headlights.
DEER.
Deer and the headlights.
Yep.
And the Headlights. So Deer and the Headlights. What's the song title?
Parallel lines.
Parallel Lines. Parallel has 3 L's, right?
And there's one L in lines.
1 L in lines. Okay, good. I was a little confused there. All right, so here we go.
Where's the music?
So we're gonna throw a song out to you. You may or may not know it. It's got to be YouTubeable, and then you'll play it and break it down.
Breaking it down. That's the first thing.
Right.
I may not be able
Okay.
to put a convincing performance together in lightning quick speed. That takes practice.
My Spotify is failing me, so just
Life is hard, you know. Life is hard. Sometimes songs don't come this instant, and when you want them. You can turn it up a little bit.
so it's solid quiet, but there's a really clear guitar part we can hear.
So this is it?
The guitar part is
The sun's gone to the ground. All is dead, still dead.
I like it.
There are weeping waters out.
All right, why don't we stop it there?
Okay.
I know it's about to get good.
Drag our wasted.
Yeah, it's very interesting already. Okay, so we'll take in just a manageable amount, okay? Like, I don't know, food critics, however they get that awesome job, you're not going to try and describe the entire meal all at once, right? Okay, so this is just maybe the little thing, the amuse-bouche, or whatever they call it, of the song. The very first part of the song, I'm noticing that there's this bomb. I can't sing that low. Oh, so
They play half down, half
That's
up.
fine. That's fine.
It takes me so long to do with the tuner on my phone.
It always amazes me how quickly you.
So E flat standard is what we're in.
Yeah.
Now, the guitarists in the room might want to know why I'm tuning to this tuning. It's because I have an idea of the strings as they are in this state, that they're actually going to be utilized at some point. when
So
I
you're
try to
down
add
a
them.
half step with all the strings.
All of them. All of
Okay.
them. This particular song sounds to me like it's in the key of G flat / F sharp major. And there's a very simple thing going throughout it, okay? Now, first time I've heard it. I might be missing some details, but it's gonna go right. And then can we hear it again? Well, I don't know. I'm not like turning my head. There's nobody like playing it on guitar, so I can.
There's no sign of me, don't look around. And if the sun's gone,
Okay, cool. Well, let's pause it right there. Thank you. Making you run back and forth. So it's gonna go like this. It's gonna go 1. Something like that, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that is kind of a little bit of that song, right? Now, we heard that kind of repeating bass note, which is kind of nice. And I knew that in the particular key of this song, after I tuned the guitar down, this was gonna give me a series of notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8 is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I heard the melody, and the melody I heard it as 5, 3, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then a high 2, and then a 1, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 6, 5, 4, 3, like that, right? You know the song the best, so.
Yeah, well,
Was that
you're
pretty
in
close?
I'm sure. Oh, yeah. All the notes are
Okay,
right. Yeah,
pretty close. Okay, good.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So now I could write all that down, which I would highly recommend if anybody's trying to do this, right? But what I was trying to do, if you could notice, I was taking the sound, which is very raw, kind of, it's just sound, right? And what I was doing is I was kind of taking a measuring stick or a ruler or tape measure, whatever, if you can imagine that, an imaginary one, and trying to measure the distances between the notes I was hearing. And so now you can tell that there's some high notes in the song. It ranges pretty high, and there's really low one. It's like the bottom of my range, low G. This is like G flat technically. So right there, there's this range, and somewhere in between you can tell like that there's going to be some notes in the middle, but where exactly do they fall? It takes a little bit of training. There are some people who can kind of just tell you right away, and some people can just sing it back after they've heard the melody enough times. I'm sure we all have sung along to, a favorite Backstreet Boys song at one point. No?
Yes.
Yes, yes, definitely. Definitely, Coldplay before they started working with Rihanna. Or maybe after. And, you sing along, and it's that same mechanism in your brain that's spitting out your own reproduction of the melody that I kind of say, okay, hold on a second, let's pick that apart. And instead of it going from in your ear to kind of like, hopefully it sounds right when you sing it out, because some people sing along and it's not quite there yet. Hopefully there's this connection between what you're hearing and what you're going to kind of spit back out. You don't even have to be a musician to understand what's happening here, right? But the idea is you're hearing sound and you're processing it, you're translating it into a form that you can actually work with, okay? So, there it is. So, if you look at this, I'm sorry for the people who are on Ustream, they can't really see the screen right here, but right now I'm showing you a grid, and there are these scale degrees. So I just went, and then I went up here to 9, which is like not on the page right now. Right? And the note I was playing was this one over here, but like way off the screen to the left. It's kind of a lot lower, right? Okay. So, so far so good. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
How about from the person who suggested the song? Any kind of.
I'm thrilled that we're promoting this song.
So it was a lesser known band, you said,
Yeah.
and that was only around for a brief time.
Yep.
Yeah. It's sad, you know, flare-ups. They're just, and they're gone.
I'm glad you sound like you like the song now.
It's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So any kind of like reaction or response, like musically, to what just happened?
Nothing to add yet.
Nothing to add. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm just always fascinated at how quickly you're able to pick it up. Yeah, and that very clear explanation of the range to try to find those notes between the high and the low there.
So let's be a little detailed about what I just did, right? So there are these make-believe, or I would guess you could say perceptual measurements of how low and how high a pitch is. Okay, so this note right here, I happen to know there are 26 of these apart. How do I know that? Well, because I can show you the smallest increment is known as a half step. And so if I count them, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Right? So that's 26 half steps. How did I know that? Well, I don't think that it's going to fit in this amount of time, but I knew that there was a great range spanning between those two notes. Exactly how far? Actually, you know, like how you have millimeters and then you have centimeters. In the same way you have half steps, but then you also have these other units that make music a lot more easy to kind of grasp. And they have these things called intervals. So these are all, right here, these are all half steps apart. You guys can see that?
Yeah.
From 1 to 8 is 12 half steps, the first note of the scale, and the 8th note of the scale are exactly 12 half steps apart. And then here we have intervals. I just made this today. So it's something in store for the Skype students that already have seen a lot of this stuff. This is new. So I saw, I heard this thing, it was descending. This is actually the first interval that we learn as kids. Rain, rain, go away, right? Right? What's that called? It's descending by 3 half steps, but you know, you don't measure a whole, you know, jog in feet. You break it down in miles, and this particular meaningful musical measurement is known as a descending minor third. You count that, it's 1, 2, 3. So if I were here, 1, 2, 3, that would be the distance of a minor third. So I heard a minor third. That in and of itself wouldn't be enough. There was actually some more context because I heard the first note in the vocals, but then I also heard this note in the guitar, which is a perfect fifth, 5-1. That's a distance right there, but obviously it was lower by an octave. So it was an octave and a fifth, known as a compound fifth. It's just a fancy word for saying an octave and a fifth. And you have this relationship between the note that's being played on the guitar and the note that's being sung by the singer. And then based on relationships, this is called relative pitch. And how well your ear starts to get acquainted with these different relationships is going to determine how accurately, and to some extent how much you do it, is going to determine how quickly you can kind of come up with something like this, to plot out what you're hearing and to put it on paper. Now, hopefully, guys, you can see that the point of doing that in my head, and I could have written it down, I guess, but it would have taken a little bit of time, was to manipulate it, to work with it, and do something with it, right? So wouldn't it be nice if I took that idea and started to do something else with it, okay? So I don't know what I'm going to do right now, but we'll see. I'm going to start something else. We'll see. Something like that. Okay. So that was not Deer in the Headlights, Parallel Lines. That was something inspired by Deer in the Headlights, Parallel Lines, right? So clearly I kept some elements of it, right? I kept the main note of the song. This was still the thing. It was still the main rhythm, kind of plodding along. And the notes that I selected to kind of intersperse throughout that thing, they were still in the same kind of like rhythm, the same general kind of 2, 3, 4. Too bad the horn's not in time. Too bad. Da, 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 da. You know, so it's not even in tune. Why they gotta make them more musical. But yeah, so these notes I'm kind of interspersing throughout, right? They're still in the same grouping of beats and they fit. And these notes are also kind of a different choice than what the singer sang, which is what starts to make a departure from Deer in the Headlights. And then eventually, right, taking some of these ideas, you end up somewhere maybe that is totally different from Deer in the Headlights, because I'm going to remove the thing that started it. Maybe like so now it's something that is almost unrecognizable from the original, right? Because we removed that kind of, that very characteristic element of it. And so there was this bass that was repeating, right? And so this thing on top was mine, and then get rid of that, and then do something else. And like this thing that I ended up putting underneath was still in the world of the song, but maybe on the, maybe it was in Brooklyn, this one was in Manhattan, you know? So it was just that kind of, you know, a few train stops away, right? Okay? And somebody who has heard this song, Parallel Lines, maybe they would be able to hear a little bit of a connection, but I doubt it, right?
But they would just also like it and not know why.
Yeah, that's probably a good
A
point.
little kind of intangible.
Maybe something on a subconscious level.
Yeah. So how are we doing so far? Yeah? Pretty good?
Well,
We've been going for less than an hour, but it feels like it's been kind of like dense and stuff. So maybe we can just open it up at this point to maybe any questions. Maybe we could do another song or more of this, but I think we kind of got the idea from what we could get from this for the purpose of what we're talking about. But maybe any questions at all? Just kind of.
Can you explain it's maybe obvious, but the difference there between the major intervals and the minor intervals?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, so people who are watching, unfortunately they can't see this graph, but I've got these, the degrees of the major scale over here, okay? Now this is known as, if I play a 1, this is a 1 for purposes of what we're talking about. And this other note, someone else is playing a 1. So we hear these 2 notes sound together in unison. That's known as a perfect unison.
Okay.
So if I keep going up the degrees of the major scale, there's a different distance now. So there was 0 half steps here. So if we keep going down, there was 0 here. But if I go up to a major second, which is just the next degree of the scale, it's going to sound like this. They call that a major second. And if we keep going, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, perfect octave. And some of these are called major, and some of these are called perfect. Why is that? Well, because if you go back down the scale, you get a different number of half steps. So you guys recall this one is 2 half steps, right? So if I start here, I have to go 1, 2 to get there. Well, when I do the scale in reverse, I only go 1. So it's actually, in comparison, this little interval, this sound, sounds smaller than this. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Close together. These 2 notes are close together. But sounds a little bit more spacious, you know what I mean? There's more musical space and distance between those 2 notes. So this one has been given the name minor second because it is 1 half step smaller than the major second. And in every major interval case, you also have a minor interval that is its parallel, that is 1 half step smaller. So a major third would be 4 half steps, again these perceptual musical distances, and minor thirds would be 3 half steps, and so on and so forth. Now that leaves us with the question of like, why are these called perfect? Well, if you look at a perfect octave, it's 12 half steps, and you also have 12 half steps when you go from 8 down to 1. 1 up to 8 and 8 down to 1, 1 up to 8, 8 down to 1, they're the same. So that's why they're called perfect. The fifth is 7 half steps, and that's the same whether you're ascending or descending the major scale. And the perfect fourth, that's the same descending as it is ascending. 5 half steps right there. Okay? So that's why they're called major and minor intervals and also perfect intervals. Again, this is within the realm of Western music. I would not be able to take this and perfectly apply it to all systems of music, but some would fit pretty closely.
So what would you have if you were going from a 2 to a 4?
A 2 to 4 would be an ascending, you mean 2 up to 4?
Yeah.
So 2 up to 4, if you count that, that would be 3 half steps, right? So 2, up 1, 2, 3 half steps.
Right.
Now, we're going up by 3 half steps, and that's not a major third. That's not a major second.
Right.
That is a ascending minor third.
So that's how you would characterize it.
Right. So these are the same whether they're ascending or
Or
descending. Okay? So the descent is just to illustrate how these intervals came about. Somebody smarter than me figured out how to kind of categorize these different musical intervals, and they ended up becoming super useful for talking about the way melodies move and the way the notes shift from low to high and how far did they go. Oh, why do I love the sound of that? And then all of a sudden you have your favorite intervals. Here's one that I like. Here's a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I really like sixths.
play the ending of that song at the beginning of your doodling.
Really?
Yeah. There's like a little descending thing.
And so
that
now,
probably has a
I don't
space.
know this because I've never heard the end of the song, but if Tim's ears are signaling to him what I think that he is, he's hearing sixths in the song. So we'll see.
Just like the descending, like pinching part
Okay.
going down. Sounded the same to me.
Okay, can you play that again? Almost. Now, what you're hearing are indeed parallel intervals. They're meaning that you have an interval and it's moving, and the other thing that is coupled with it is moving in that same way. They're behaving the same way, much in the way that I was doing 6, 6, 6. Except in this case, you have octaves. You have octaves, so these are parallel octaves. There's a higher voice and a lower voice, and then you hear parallel octaves, and you know. Children of the 90s will, or people who are alive and listening to radio in the 90s. Parallel octaves. Right? I'm in the wrong key, but because I down-tuned, but yeah. So there's High and Dry by Radiohead, right? So parallel octaves, right? The other cool thing about being able to break down songs, okay, other than to turn them into something else that I think is worth endless amounts of time to invest, because it always gives you back more, you know, when you do this, when you apply yourself and try to really get into this pursuit. It always outgives you. It reciprocates more than you could ever put in. I think it's just super rewarding, which is why I keep coming back to music. It's not like like I just work and like there's no reward. It's a very rewarding thing. But the other thing that you get when you break down music is you start to see connections between Deer in the Headlights and Radiohead. There was almost no connection necessarily just from listening. Maybe some people could make a case that, hey, this band sounds like Radiohead. And maybe sometimes those cases are pretty convincing. But through music theory, you can actually pinpoint exactly what is being used in songs that you're exposed to. And let's say you end up coming across something that you really, really like. And you find that, man, I really like this thing that I'm noticing in this song, but it kind of reminds me of this other song. And you kind of like, wow, that's the same thing in both songs. And then you realize, man, I really like that. And then you go and find a musician, or you play it yourself and you say, I'm going to make a new little ditty with this thing that I found that I like. Let's say the example is parallel octaves. I really like the sound of parallel octaves. Well, because I heard it in High and Dry by Radiohead. I heard it in the end of Deer in the Headlights. And I also heard it in, Sound of Music, or whatever you prefer, right? And then you say to yourself, well, I'm going to grab myself a musician and say, play something with parallel octaves for me. Assuming this person has ever heard of musical intervals, which any classical trained musician or someone who's taking music theory lessons would know, you're going to hear the same thing that you love and were able to identify in the songs that you're into. If you have an instrument to play on, then you have the ability to let that be the birthing point or the launching point for making music and just playing, And you guys saw me playing earlier. It's like, if you guys weren't here, I would have kept going with that in this room quietly, just to myself, and just playing for like another 20, 30 minutes, and maybe that would become a song, Maybe if you guys have ever heard Bon Iver, that artist, he has a similar song. It kind of goes. stopped doing it because I was realizing I was ripping off someone else, and then I have to start this process all over again. But you see what I'm saying? Like, who knows how songs get written? I think that's something that paralyzes a lot of people who play instruments too. Like the idea of, how do I write a song? Well, you have to start somewhere. And if that somewhere is with music theory, there is a wealth of inspiration, namely other people's songs. And that's plenty to inspire you. How do I write songs? It's not like I expressly take a song and then rip off it and then mangle it and break it down and turn it into something else, but that's a great way to start, you know? It's not a formula. I don't want to kind of advocate like there's some sort of formula to the way creatives work or anything. That would be blasphemy, you know? But the idea that if there's somewhere to start, who knows kind of where that inspiration will lead, you know? I went in a little bit of a Bon Iver direction, maybe because I like Bon Iver, and that's okay, you know? And so these influences, they work their way in. So, cool. Well, I'm glad you brought that out.
I'm glad I worked with the example.
So, and did that artist have several different albums or CDs?
Just two.
Just two?
It's 2 albums.
Yeah.
When were they around?
That's 2 more than I do.
Only a few years ago,
Yeah.
2009, 2011.
Sounds like a great piece.
Oh,
Yeah, I am infatuated.
cool. Very cool. So, anybody else? Any questions or comments or insights or observations or anything?
So, something I'm trying to deal with is like when you actually have to try to play in a different style
Yeah.
or something like that. So this is a good way, like, say you for some reason had to start playing funk. You never played
Okay,
funk before,
okay.
but you needed the groove, you needed to get it. So would you do something like this with funk music or something like that too? I grew up playing like classic rock and blues. That's how I learned to play guitar.
Sure,
So
yeah.
that's like in a lot of my playing. Now my friend wants to play like disco and funk.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get better at playing in that style without sounding like a blues guitarist who's being forced to play
Yeah.
disco guitar.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, there can be interesting things that happen when musicians of 2 different kind of stylistic backgrounds end up, you know, sharing musical minds, right? And something very interesting can happen, you know, like it doesn't have to be like you fit in a little perfect funk groove when you're playing with this guy. But to answer your question, I think more specifically, what is it about funk that makes funk funky? That would be the question to start off that pursuit. And funk music, a lot of it has to do with this relationship between rhythmic syncopation, which, if you're familiar with, is this idea of playing off the beat.
Right.
Or whatever.
So the rhythm for me is going better, at least.
Okay.
I get
okay.
like like the offbeat,
Yeah, the
like
offbeat,
guitar strumming
that's
and
what
things like
syncopation
that.
is, right?
I get
Yeah.
that, right?
Uh-huh,
I think it's more of like from a creative and both musical standpoint, like what was it in that bass line where they're like, do you pick like
Now you notice that
different
I
modes,
mimic
select
the
different
bass.
notes?
I
Yeah.
mimic the bass, right?
Uh-huh.
So now the bass part is essential to funk music. A drummer is also pretty essential.
Yeah.
So you
Uh-huh.
keep doing it by yourself, you're like, who am I kidding? You know?
Yeah.
But with all those things aside, I was doing something else with the note choice there, right? So the note choice of funk music a lot of times has to do with these different scales that you may or may not have come across in your studies or your explorations on, your internet, Wikipedia articles. And you get things like the minor pentatonic mode. You get things like the blues scale. You get things like Dorian, Mixolydian, and these kind of words that are thrown out that mean nothing to the uninitiated. But once you start to think in terms of relationships and half steps and how many half steps go in between these different scale degrees, you start to come up with a lot of different palettes to be able to paint a particular bass line with and to pepper a syncopated rhythm with. Okay, so what I had chosen just there was a Dorian scale. So okay, so that Dorian scale combined with a syncopated rhythm I did a little chromaticism there, actually. I broke the rules, but... See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you combine a little bit of this idea of what kind of flavor am I going for? And a lot of the musical word for that is mode, right? What mode do I want to play in? And then what style, like, of the rhythm do I want to do? And the feature of funk music being syncopated, let me do a syncopated Dorian mode. And all of a sudden, funk starts to appear. But, you know, you have to go a little farther because you have to have a drummer. You have to have a bass player, you know, and then eventually maybe the guitar player does come up with a cool little riff, but then eventually you'll kind of like... you know, or something like that, you know, and then you start to build something from that point, right? Mm-hmm. So without getting like ultra specific, does that kind of
yeah. I guess the other half to that coin is like how do you just immerse yourself in like a new kind of style, or like a new kind of, like, that was a good specific example of like how to look into funk. But if somebody isn't trying to look exactly into funk, how do you sort of try to introduce yourself to the musical qualities of whatever would be jazz?
So it all begins kind of with the question, right? Like, what makes this style, and how does it differentiate from other styles of music, right? So stylistic questions eventually lead you to discussion topics like modes. Rock music, for instance, is really big on the Dorian, the Mixolydian, the blues scale, and the minor and major pentatonics. Not as much into the rhythmic syncopation, okay? Specifically a shuffle syncopation. If you want to get into funk, you start to really study the shuffle and syncopation of that, right? And so there's some overlap and then there's some distinction. Now, if you want to get into folky stuff, right, you're not going to see any shuffle syncopation, right? You're almost none. But you're going to see a lot of Ionian, you're going to see a lot of Aeolian. Maybe occasionally you'll see Dorian and Mixolydian. We've got like guys like Neil Young who are rock. You see, these words that we attach to genres, they actually come from like a musical place, right? So, as if that weren't, you know, the case, that's obviously the case. When you peel the genre back, all of a sudden you're finding these features that actually are shared between these hybrid genres, and these features that are not shared by songs that people would usually consider indistinct genres, you know what I mean? So how do you immerse yourself in one particular genre? Well, you have to be able to define what makes that genre. And so that has to do with listening, has to do with listening to what other people are saying about that genre, because genres are kind of like this weird thing that are like defined by big groups of people, right? And kind of well recognized and just kind of assumed. And then you can go into each one of those concepts. So, you know, I noticed, hey, you know, this folk music, it has a lot of droning strings, you know. And then you say, what the heck is what are droning strings? And then you go into the concept of droning strings, and all of a sudden you're finding like that idea becomes sort of the thing that starts to lead you down this path. So can you just jump into the pool and like totally immerse yourself? Maybe not, I would say. Maybe it's more of like, let's follow crumbs on a trail. And as you keep going down that trail, you'll notice, wow, Williamsburg is super different. Super different from the West Side. Super different.
So would you say, like, to Tim's point that like what I was thinking about when you posed that question was I'm thinking maybe not disco but funk, Chili Peppers. So here's a rock band that's got a lot of funk to it, and then as I'm thinking, how do you kind of isolate, define, and then kind of eventually taking that path to more funk disco, something like that. Is that an easy way to pick up clues? If you were able to identify a band that kind of bridged those two musical styles.
Yeah, that's a great way to, that's a crumb, you know what I mean? If you figure out like, man, this funk guitarist is the best, he's my favorite, then you go and you follow every single piece that funk guitarist has ever done. And that's one way to also enter in, right? Well, I'm gonna take, James Brown's funky guitarist, and I'm gonna pick apart everything he ever did, or maybe not everything, but the songs that I like, start with that, right? And then all of a sudden you're able to kind of start to follow that path down, and eventually when you get far enough into it, you'll find that your scenery has changed. You're gonna think differently about your instrument. You're gonna have those kind of little epiphanies that you couldn't have had before you went down that path. So it's a general answer at this point, but kind of helpful, insightful a little bit. Okay, cool. All right, talk to me later and displeased with this in the
Okay.
Just kidding.
Yeah, don't make too many hand motions like this. That's uncomfortable.
That was,
Yeah, you're already in my apartment.
Good thing that was on camera.
You guys want us to leave?
It's not exactly.
That's pretty funky.
That's funny.
No. We'll have to keep that as our inside joke.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm going to share
Very
that
inside
on
joke.
my channel where, some 12-year-olds watch my tutorials. But yeah, okay. So are there any other questions? Maybe not specifically regarding this material, but even just for me, my journey, whatever, my music, anything like that?
I was thinking when you were opening up the session here that when did you or at an early age were you able to have such a strong ear where you're able to pick up the differences, or was that, I mean, obviously you've been trained for so long and this has been your life, but it always, as I mentioned before, it always impressed me how quickly, even from the first lesson where you told me my guitar was not in tune, and I didn't know it, but you knew it, through my little microphone and your speakers. But at what point did that start to happen for you, or was it just something that, can you recall? Was it early on, or?
I would say the best answer I could give is that as I look back, I'm not where I am today. I wasn't where I am today. So there's a continual process of like getting better, refining your ear, and kind of just becoming more and more accurate, or your relationship to your instrument becoming more intimate. Like I really know this guitar because I've just spent a lot of time getting to know it. I've really gotten to know the major scale and the intervals in the major scale because I've been kind of picking apart those scale degrees in songs for a long time. So it is gradual, it's continual. I can't guarantee that everybody would have the same pace in terms of their improvement in their ear, but I do know that once you kind of at least have a framework, which is like to say a lot of people don't even know the major scale is whole, whole, half. How would you even have the tools or the words or the ideas to even begin to describe the Western music that you're listening to, right? So once you have that foundation that a lot of this music has to do with these ideas, then you can use that to start to develop sort of that understanding, forming that kind of musical foundation, that educational musical foundation. And then your ear will come with that, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but
Not exactly, but I understand it from what you've described. I mean, it wasn't a moment that you could point back to and say it was just kind of the gradual process of
singing was a big one for me. I was
Okay.
in this thing called the San Francisco Boys Chorus, and all these prepubescent boys were singing classical and folk and traditional music, and we learned how to sing in 4-part harmony from a pretty young age, and that's hard to do. I sang alto 1, which is, if you hear the highest note being soprano 1, and then soprano 2 being below, and then alto 1, and then alto 2 being below. I was in the middle, and that's actually the hardest place to distinguish where you're supposed to sing in terms of how high or how low. And I would say that played a big role in like my ear kind of getting better. So
How long were you in that?
7 years maybe.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, from 1st grade to 8th grade, had braces. We sang at some Giants games, 49ers games. It was pretty fun.
And are you from a musical family?
I would say my family's into music, but none of them really are super serious on an instrument or anything like that. My dad can. This is my dad's favorite song, and his only song. Like that. So it's pretty good, not that phone annoying, 3 chords. My mom never really played an instrument. She can sing. She has a beautiful voice. Not trained. My brother is maybe even more into music than I am,
Wow.
except on the listening side. Like he knows a ton of the music that is like kind of in the underground, especially like
So he would know Tim's. He would know Tim's
no,
band.
he's probably more into like the dancier electronic
Okay.
house,
All right.
a lot of other kinds of flavors. But he introduced me to Radiohead too, so
Oh, did he?
he knows rock too. So yeah. I don't know. Is it genetic? Is it inherited? Is it nurtured? I think that's a question for the ages. But you never know till you do it.
So you commit to it. Yeah.
You'll see. Yeah. Okay. Any other final questions, maybe?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Warren, how did you develop your own voice as a songwriter?
How did I develop my voice as a songwriter? Okay, well, I feel like that question might be more fair for like somebody who is like an established songwriter, and actually has put out a couple albums or something. I've written a few songs and I'm working on an album, but I would like to think that my stuff is a combination of all the things that I'm into that have influenced me either consciously or not consciously. And also, whether it was a rainy day that day or, whether I had something, particularly wonderful for breakfast, I don't know. There are a lot of different things that kind of influence. But as far as what's intentional, I can only say it's what your ear hears and recognizes as good that kind of helps you develop what you're into. So like if I'm playing and I discover I don't really like the sound, it's too like it's too, I don't know, plain or kind of white bread or whatever, I'll go towards something maybe like a little more complicated, or maybe even more complicated and kind of like and I have something that, okay, I like that. And again, that's a crumb. It's not a whole song, but you follow that crumb down a trail. And eventually, if you have the stuff that you like and you keep pursuing these little musical things that like make you feel energized and inspired, hopefully the end result, or the byproduct, I should say, is going to be a collection of sounds that we call songs, right? So it's like, let's say I really love these dense harmonies, and I really love finger picking. Well, a lot of people like finger picking, but maybe they might not like dense harmonies, you know? And then maybe a lot of people might like dense harmonies, but maybe they might not be super into finger picking. And those are only two characteristics of things that I would feel maybe sort of describe my sound as a songwriter. I have kind of showed my musical friends whose opinions that I really respect some things that I'm working on, and they'll say, "Oh man, that sounds so Warren," you know, and that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing because whatever those things are, those two characteristics being a couple of maybe the hundreds that you could use to describe what somebody's sound is like, those things are things that I followed. Like, it piqued my interest here, and then I just kind of said, well, where is that going to lead me? Where is that going to lead me? So that's intentional. That part is very intentional. A lot of the stuff that happens and influences the music that you end up making might not be in your control, you know. Maybe you can go seek out, you know, Japanese black metal music, and then, you know, that'll help you like really get out of your comfort zone or whatever, you know. Maybe you can just force yourself to go to a reggae festival, and, you know, all of a sudden, like, all these other kind of sounds that you're making start to not seem as exciting anymore. I don't know. Yeah. So there's that intentional part that I say ends up boiling down to you're gonna follow whatever your ear tells you is good. So if you know, everybody's music taste is gonna be slightly different. You know, we may have some commonalities, but how different your music taste is actually gonna show up in the songs that you write. Assuming that you actually are really working on songs. You know, like if you only try to write a little bit, then maybe that's not a skill that is actually fully developed that can adequately kind of reflect the music that you're into as well. So there's also that aspect of just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, you know, and writing some more, and then throwing it all away and then writing again. You know what I mean? Like there's that aspect to it, right? So yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever tried to answer that before.
Your music is also very eclectic when I listen to your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eclectic. What?
Like I was
What does that
looking
mean?
at your SoundCloud.
Oh.
Like
Okay.
different styles of music throughout. Interesting.
Yeah, okay. So like the stuff on my SoundCloud, I would definitely say there's some electronic music influence because I've been making beats with my laptop. And then there's like the bands that I used to listen to when I was like growing up in church, and there were only 3 bands that every church kid knew. It was like DC Talk, Jars of Clay, and Caitlin's Call. And you guys may or may not know their sound, but one of them in particular had a very strong impact on me. They had this song, it went like this. Like a song I feel like I keep chasing when I'm writing music, but I can never quite get there. Because to me, that's like one of the most perfect songs. There's this whole like drum beat that comes in, and there's these really cryptic lyrics.
What's the name of the piece?
Jars of Clay, Frail. It's called Frail.
Okay.
And the lyrics make no sense to me today, but they're beautiful. They're really beautiful. They're very paradoxical and metaphorical.
Didn't they have like a minor hit or some kind of a hit?
Oh yeah, they had this crossover hit.
Yeah, what was that?
Where I'm sure every Christian kid who was only allowed to listen to Christian music was suddenly very proud
right.
that there was a crossover.
They're making it.
Flood.
Flood.
Yeah.
But if I can't fill out the 40 days. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big part of my musical shaping had to do with the music that I was exposed to in church. And then I branched out and I realized, well, hey, church doesn't have a monopoly on art, and I started listening to other kinds of things and experiencing other types of art that I just liked. You know, some of it was pretty awesome, and some of it not so great. But you know, I followed what my ear told me was good, and through some of that, I would say, you know, I ended up listening a lot to like electronic music. I was really into Dave Matthews in college, and then after college, I was like, man, that's really dude music and college dude, and like I wasn't into that as much anymore. And then there was a period where I listened to only Radiohead for like every day for, I don't know, like a long time. So I definitely get when people say, you know, hey man, this sounds like Radiohead influence. It's great.
Right.
I kind of cringe because I listen to other things too, you know, but I take it as a compliment, right? Because somehow that's absorbed somehow through listening. So yeah, as many of the different genres and artists that I've like really enjoyed, I find that yeah, it just kind of bubbles up when I'm making music. It just kind of comes up, you know. I also really like Boyz II Men back in the day, and they have some crazy melismatic R&B singing style. And when I sing on some of my songs, I've gotten a few comments saying like, that's kind of interesting. It's like an R&B thing, but you got kind of like a folky finger picking thing. And I well, okay, cool. You know, what genre would you put that in? And then they don't quite know. They don't quite know because I was, you know,
Boys to Radiohead.
which is into Boys to Radiohead, Boys Head. I don't know. The Z, Boys.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of it might sound eclectic because I don't know, I followed all those things intently. You know, I'm just a big fan of a lot of different great musicians. I think. You know.
Just a question on your.
Yeah.
I referenced the your fun with alternate tunings, and so you change your tuning, and now you're constructing chords. Are you thinking in terms of your note relationships, or are you thinking in terms of the notes constructing the chords when you're so quickly adapting when you did that video?
The alternate tunings video.
Yeah.
Okay, so I made a video where like I retuned my guitar to whatever everybody on Facebook told me to retune it as, and some of the tunings I was familiar with, some of them I was not. And so when I tuned to that particular tuning, the relationships between the strings started to widen based on what standard tuning is, because that's the most familiar to me, or to compress. And based on those new relationships, I had to move my finger to compensate accordingly to play chords that I had in my mind that I was familiar with.
When you think, well, I guess you're probably doing both. You're thinking of the relationship and you're thinking of the note, right?
Both, yeah,
right.
for sure.
And then, like, there was a moment where you started playing, I think it was Skinny Love, or right? Yeah,
I didn't know that was the tuning.
Right.
Somebody put the Skinny Love tuning, and I didn't know it was the same tuning as Skinny Love. And as I was playing along, it was kind of, oh, this is the Skinny Love tuning, I think.
Right.
And then I tried to play along with it. I never made a tutorial for that just because I think it sounds really tough. Really, but you know, one of these days maybe. Yeah. Well, I don't want to jam more things in everybody's brains tonight. I think that might be a good amount of musical info. But any last things, questions, comments?
Thanks, Warren.
Thank our host too.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim, for hosting. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
This is fun. I think if you guys think it's fun, I probably think it's a little more fun. Because I'm like,
No, I think we think it's more fun.
thousands of miles away, and like, you know, here we're sharing the same space and some ideas and some passion. And yeah, I won't forget that this happened. This is cool. Thank you guys. Yeah, so I'm gonna sign off here, and yeah, we're gonna maybe look for some late night eats soon. Getting hungry. But anyway, all right, bye guys.